Happy Juneteenth, everyone. I just wanted to bring you peace and blessings, and hopefully you can see this gorgeous view right behind me. I'm trying to keep to my promise to you to come at least 3 times a week. So forgive me if it don't happen. However, I'm gonna make every effort as possible to make sure as that I'm dedicated to you in hopes that you'll become dedicated to me. So today is Juneteenth. And one of the things that we have to think about on Juneteenth is what is the purpose? Do you know why Juneteenth arrived? Um, and if not, let me share this with you. Back in the day, we had an opportunity to become free, and we were supposed to become free on July 4th. However, that did not occur. So what happened some very long years later on this day, which is on June 19th, that we now call Juneteenth, um, we actually got our freedom. Our ancestors got our freedom for us. So, in hopes of celebrating them, if you could do a libation, I would do one in front of you, but my water jug is actually holding up this camera. But basically, what it is that you will get some water, and then you'll drop the water down in the grass to give libation to your ancestors. And so you're giving them water, a little drink of water for their tongue to make sure you keep them moisturized and healthy on the other side through. And so for those of you all who believe in ancestor generation, that's a great thing for you to do. I remember growing up, my grandparents in particular, the greatest heathen I ever loved, which is my granddaddy. I love him because I think I love him more because of the fact that he wasn't like everyone else. He did his own thing. He had fun. He couldn't read or write, but he worked for the government. Another thing was he was very, very smart. He had that common sense, that old timey wisdom, and that knowledge that sometimes we as educated folks, sometimes we become educated fools. My grandfather was none of that. And the reason why I like to call him a heathen was because of the fact that even though I spent some years trying to get him saved, he spent some years trying to tell me that I better save myself. And so we would go back and forth in that. But even in that, I would honestly have to tell you, my granddaddy, who I love, that called Jesus, I love him because his love of music, his love of people, places, and things. He was a great traveler. He went to New Mexico, to the Bahamas. He took cruises, despite of the fact that he couldn't read or write. You know, he was on cruise and on trains. Go to New York or what have you, wherever he wanted to go, he pretty much found a way. But nevertheless, one of the things I also liked about him was his belief in me. I'll never forget us having a conversation, and I thought it was a lie, just a fire ant, excuse me, y'all. And it ended up being true. One thing he always said: there's three people he had to be scared of, and it was the lawyer, the doctor, and the Indian chief. And he got this name he used to call me. And he said, "You know what? One day you're gonna be the Indian chief." That's the part I thought, and meaning that I didn't want to become a medicine woman or a shaman or a spiritualist or any name you want to call it. I don't really care. There's some other names that people get sometimes uncomfortable with, but I don't really care about that either because my granddaddy he didn't care about it. The only thing that he wanted to do was to be good and do good and have a good time at it. And one of the things too, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he would always have like the drunks or something in South Carolina. Man, they would come over. He would make sure they had their taste on. They would have their taste, and my grandmother would go ahead and cook for them. And if they wanted to take a shower, get cleaned up or wash, those are something that he did. And this was like on a weekly basis. Let me tell you, I grew up with the drunks from South Carolina, and I love them. You know why I love them? Because they love me, and they love my grandfather. And one of the things too I loved about him was that he may not have had an education, but he had 6 children. Don't you know all six of them children have at least, at the very least, an associate's degree? Now, where they do that at? Back in the day, they always wanted to do more for their children than they did do. Now, I will say this now, because I don't want to paint my grandfather out to be no saint. Because those of you all who know, they know he loved his Budweiser. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I said. And his Pall Mall cigarette. And even on my altar, I actually have that in veneration or respecting for him, or to show my respect for him. But let me tell you, honey, my grandfather and my grandmother, they used to have these parties. Man, it would be more than 100 people at the house. And one good thing I can always say that no matter how many people were there, if you knew one person, you could just come on in and you'll feel welcome. And not only that, I've had some old coworkers who I used to work with. They would come and like my grandma threw I think the best brunch. I think it was maybe around Christmas or Valentine's Day. I think it was either after he had died or right before. But nevertheless, well, it had to be after he had died because I was working in the school system. I think, yeah. And so they actually came over and oh my grandma had fixed us the best breakfast. I mean, had a whole spread of things and everybody was just welcome to come, and that's how they did it back in the day. And one of the things that I do miss now that my grandfather and my mother and my aunt that have gone over yonder is that I haven't really participated a lot in those family parties. I mean, they was just so good, and like sometimes in the parties, it wasn't something that was planned. Like on Fridays, sometimes somebody would come down and get Columbia, one of my aunts and uncles, and then somebody else would come over, and then somebody else would come over. The next thing you know, you had a good old shindig, a good old party. And I know I'm rambling, but I'm still trying to tell you all a story about my life, a story about why I love my grandfather, and one of the reasons why I'm giving him honor on this Juneteenth, to celebrate his freedom that he had, to celebrate the freedoms that he gave me, and some of the things that he told me that I'm gonna tell you all that I see my grandfather, every day, 365, and y'all on that leap year, 366, he always light a fire. Now, his spirit guide dealt with fire. Now, I deal with fire, but you won't see it a whole lot. At least I don't show it. A lot of times you would see like the water, because I love, like a few minutes ago, I was by the seat of remembrance at my lodge that I'm currently at. And so I was there and I was thinking and I was just looking and just feeling really good, right? And just thinking about the moment and how today I just wanted to have a day of peace and just be out here in the prettiness of the nature and what have you. And I have that. But most importantly, I have the memories of my ancestors and my beloved heathen is grandfather. What I was sharing with you all was that him and my grandmother, they love people and they would prepare a meal for people regardless of if they were clean, dirty, had a job, or what have you. And even if they was a drunkard. And let me tell you what happened. So he would always make sure they had their taste. And then they would help take care of me. And I can honestly tell you, nothing ever happened underneath their watch. In fact, they helped train me to be a successful person. They actually taught me my Bible. So I know that thing from the inside out, the outside in, up, down, and in between, honey, from people who couldn't read or write. But when I checked, like pray go, honey, it was in there. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm just so ever grateful for his presence and his love. And not only that, um, I didn't realize this was live, but nevertheless, it's okay too. For his presence and his grace and his honor and his integrity was that he was a he was a man who did many things. He could fix any single thing. And I think that the reason why I have my love for tools is because of my grandfather. I love, 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 love. When I tell you I love some tools, I can go to Harbor Freight or Lowe's or what have you, and I can always find something to buy. I can always find something to put some use to. 'Cause I remember growing up as a child when they was living like on Milton Road. I'm not gonna tell you which one, but the house is no longer there. And he had this tool organizer with the screws, the bits, the bolts, the nails, and all of that. And I said, you know what? When I grow up, I'm gonna get me one of those. I just thought that was the most fascinating thing, and it never dawned on me that you're a girl. You really supposed to be looking at shoes and what have you. But um, I didn't have that honor because the way that I was raised was that you had to have two pairs of shoes, and the two pairs of shoes had to be one black and one brown, and it just went with everything. Now, I was a whole married woman with children before I found out that that was a bunch of lies, and I already had a degree. What you say, Lady Q? I'm trying to tell you. Some things you just learn late in life, and it's okay. As long as you always learn and you're always trying to do better. And so I can even remember when the first time I went to college, right? I stood on the step of the library and I put my hand on my Kimbo and I'm looking around. I'm looking for all the drunks because they were our landscapers. They kept the yard clean at my grandfather's house. But they also gave me seeds of wisdom. And like the other day, I was walking with one of my brothers to the Italian restaurant, and we was talking about a cobbler. Do y'all know what a cobbler is? Let me explain to you what a cobbler is. A cobbler is a shoemaker or someone who can repair shoes. And there was this man named Mr. Charlie. Oh my goodness, I had loved Mr. Charlie. Mr. Charlie was a light skinned man with a mini fro and he had freckles. But Mr. Charlie, he would love to talk to me about his job. And I want to say it was at Schuler's right there on Broad Street. Not really sure, but I think that is the name. It might have been Schuler's hardware store. And he would talk about his job, and it was so fascinating. And I've always said, one of these days I'm gonna do something with shoes. And so I have not did it, kind of, sorta. So I remember the kids of mine. They went on a field trip to the Discovery Place when they were in public school, and that was like the best field trip ever. And so we went, and they had like a cobbler station. And as I was preparing my shoe out of different type of materials and stuff, man, I thought about Mr. Charlie and how grateful I am to have had him in my life. Because Mr. Charlie, um, he didn't have a lot of things, but the thing that he had was love of people, love of knowledge, love of self. And although he drunk, he still loved himself, and he loved the people who was around him. And it was a natural habitat to be at my granddaddy's house, because that's where all the fun was at. I did not realize that how much I would miss that. Because even though you might get together with friends and family now, things are not like the good old days and how it was. Because we didn't have to worry about if somebody was going to shoot, get into a fight or what have you. And yeah, some people got into a little argument, but it didn't break out into nothing because the only thing my granny had to do was get that little look, and that little look meant a whole lot. And then he also protected his ground, y'all, because he was a little shaman in his own little right, and I didn't really know it, but he was teaching me and training me, and even with my firework and dealing with fire spirits and stuff. I'm really honored to the things that he taught me, and I'm honored that I continued in something that has been a tradition in our family. Um, to honor him, even though I am a woman, you know, I really appreciate my grandfather. I'm telling you, if you all had the opportunity to meet Leroy Wells Sr., man, he'll keep you laughing. And like I was telling one of my brothers, right, how my grandfather was, every day he went to the McDonald's on Lafayette and he would go get him a paper. Now, what's funny about this was that, one of my uncles said, like, why daddy go in that restaurant and read that paper upside down? Did y'all hear that? My grandfather would read that paper upside down because he couldn't read and he didn't know no better. And nobody dare say nothing to him. And he'd sit there and he always asked them, for a medium brown bag. Now this is I'm still teaching y'all a little bit about hoodoo because anybody know about writing a petition, and if you don't have parchment paper, you can use a brown paper bag. So he would, and I'm still teaching. I need y'all to follow through with stories because back in the day, the way that you taught hoodoo and the way that you learn it through storytelling and going and testing the process. Okay, so um, he would give him a brown bag from behind the counter, and he would fill it up, a medium sized bag. It was important, not a small bag, not a large bag, but a medium sized bag every single day with sugar. Now, to the average person, that wouldn't really appeal to them. You'd be like, why would your grandfather go and get that sugar like that from that place? Okay. You know, sometimes you have to do things in front of people without people understanding. You got to have eyes to see and ears to hear and lips to speak. Well, so this went on until he was kind of bedridden. And so, as he was going to get that brown paper bag and the sugar, that was teaching me on how to sweeten things up, honey. Okay? And then he would speak over the sugar while he put it into his larger containers. But one thing about him, he never bought sugar. He was like, why? And he didn't buy straws either. So even to this day, I had to really force myself to buy straws because sometimes I think about my grandfather, and in honoring his spirit, I might get three, a handful. I used to do a handful, but I was doing more. But get three or more straws because I remember back in the day when I was growing up, that's something he did. And so to either invoke his spirit or to pay homage, I would do that. And the reason why I'm sharing this now because I don't know what little cousins of mine who might want to speak up on my channel, because they may not ask me. But you can learn a lot about your granddaddy. And so my grandfather taught me how to love people, not for what they had, but for who they were. And never try to change somebody. Just accept them for who they were. Because at the end of the day, guess what? People gonna be people. And one thing that my late aunt Michelle used to say, people gonna do what they want to do. So even when you all are trying to do work, you need to have that in the back of your mind, in the middle of your mind, and the forefront of your mind. And because when you change the scenario, you do know you got to go back in there again. It's just like whenever you have an oil change, you have to keep on doing maintenance on your car for 3,000 miles. Because I had a client who asked me, okay, so if I do a cleanse, and I'm teaching you a whole lot of things right about now because it is Juneteenth, okay? So her question was, if I do a cleanse, will it last forever? And so she actually got upset with me because I said, no, it's not going to last forever. I said, well, don't you have to get up before you go to bed and when you wake up to wash, put on deodorant, brush your teeth, freshen up your hair? I say the same is true when you're doing a cleanse. You have to maintain it. You can't just do it one time and then think it's well. Now, some people, they'll fool your head up and tell you, okay, well, you know what? You go buy this for me, $300 or $1,000 or what have you. Honey, the truth ain't in them. Because when you're doing a cleanse, you have to do it every once in a while. Let me give you another scenario since doing a maintenance in terms of preparation for the day, preparation for at night may not spoke to your life. Let me put it to you like this. Every day you're supposed to take a shit. And really, if you're really good, you're supposed to take one every single time you eat. Yeah, I did say that. That means that you have a good digestive tract and everything. And you're eating well and getting the nutrients. Okay, let me put it to you another way. When people are talking about being clean and doing a cleanse, the only thing they're telling you is that they're eating right so they can do a laxative. Let that sit on you for a minute. Okay? I remember when I was growing up, at least, we used to have to do a cleanse, which is a laxative with the white castor oil, but the black castor oil tastes better. But that white castor oil, oh, that thing was so repulsive. And so my late grandmother, Mary Elizabeth Von Richardson, she would make sure we take that castor oil off of Briar Street here. And but when we took it, we would clean everything that built up in us, and it would come all the way out. And she would have us do this seasonally. And if anything it stays in you long enough, it can cause illness. Okay? Nowadays, we don't think that we need to do a cleanse unless it's one of the favorite things or the favorite fads that everybody else is doing. But essentially, and I'm speaking as a certified herbalist, as an educator, as a mother to many, and as a friend to many, and just as Lady Q, okay? Do your own research. You know, I am not a medical doctor, but, you know, I do know it, okay? And we should do a cleanse quarterly, just like the IRS look at how business owners should pay taxes on a quarterly basis if they're doing exceedingly well. We should be doing our bodies exceedingly well by getting that cleanse too. Because it's essential that you take care of you, because if you take care of yourself from the inside, it will reflect on the outside. Okay, let me talk about me for a minute to help you out. Because sometimes you have to be the first partaker to the advice that you're giving. You see all of that right there? That's belly fat. What comes with the belly fat is weight. Okay? Even though I've had a healthy bowel movement, there's still more that I should be doing, such as a clean. Better yet, let's go to the fact. I need to do a laxative so I can help cleanse this and you don't see all of that. Okay? Now, another thing too, when we're looking at belly fat, and see, I'm not scared to talk about myself. I know my flaws, and I accept and approve of myself in that because I know that if I can identify it, talk about it, I can get it that much better and help us on the way, honey. I'm getting ready to help myself and help you too. So, with that being said, on Juneteenth, we have learned about my granddaddy, the heathen. I told you his full name, even though he's no longer with us. We have also learned about Charlie the cobbler. I love Mr. Charlie because he loves his job and loved making sure that people could walk well on their feet. Then we also learned about the parties where it was really exciting and how my heathenist grandfather may not have an education, but he made sure that his kids and his kids did the same thing too, make sure their kids had. But most importantly, we learned about how to take care of ourselves while we listened to the story and a whole lot of hoodoo, if you understand what I was telling you. I talked to you all about sweetening things up. I also talked to you all about not only sweeten things up, and I talked to you all about what you should be doing, the old way, the new way of doing stuff, and why it's essential. Um, and I got sidetracked because somebody just pulled up. And so it's going to be very important to you as you're moving forward in 2023 that you take care of yourself from your body, making sure you're cleansed by having a good, healthy laxative, and put that thing on the schedule, just like how you schedule dates or things you have to do. Put that on the schedule of things that you need to do. Okay? Also, another thing that you might want to consider is learn more about your heritage. Don't let it just be because it's a holiday that you accept people like me giving you information. Accept people like me giving you information 365 days a year and sometimes 66 because there's a leap year, because there's a little bit of knowledge that you should be able to retain to help you do a lot of great things. Because also when you look at the word, it talks about never despise the day of small beginnings. And it also talks about if you're faithful over the little, God will make you ruler over much. So, and that's talking to me too, because I need to be more consistent when I'm coming to you all. I need to be more consistent as I'm bringing you this wisdom and knowledge so that you can get a good understanding. But even in that, I'm going to take one step, which I did today, and God's going to help me continue to take many more, like I did last week. Okay? So I've tried to conclude, and I'm going to do it one more time as a recap, just to make sure that you understand what I was talking about. And I'm going to put it in another way. Because one thing that I learned when I was in RTC in college was that you tell them what you tell them what you're going to tell them what you tell them, and tell them what you already tell them. So sometimes the most godliest person may not be in the church. My grandfather never was in the church, but he taught me the love of people. He taught me about that biblical love and loving people for who they were and not what they had. Nowadays, what I see is that people are giving love if you got this and if you got that. That's materialism. That's foolish. And once the material stuff gone, what all do you have? What's the stuff? And I also gave you different examples of how my grandfather and my grandmother would love the people who are drunkards, but also how the drunkards would love us as a family and became our community, at least, for my relatives and how they became my community. And I'm still appreciative to them, even though some of them have been dead and gone for over 20 plus years. I'm doing this in remembrance of them by honoring Deuteronomy 4 and 9 to 13. You know, don't forget the things that you've seen in your youth and teach them to your children. But I was got some cousins that need to know this too, because they need to know from which they came. And Juneteenth is a great time to share. But also look at some of the things now that might have fancy names and titles, but give honor to the shoemaker, which was Mr. Charlie. Because Mr. Charlie made sure we was able to walk well. And even though we got this all that Mr. Charlie is just a man and he's doing the very best he can by Betty Wright, all Mr. Charlie's, they might go and do their thing. A man gonna be a man. But guess what? A woman's gonna be a woman. Okay? And in that, honor the least of these, because also in Matthew it talks about that. Because if it had not been for the innovations of yesterday, we wouldn't have the progress of today and the innovations and successes of tomorrow. And don't look at a book by its cover, because I learned so much from the drunkards of South Carolina and how they were functional too. Many of them had good jobs, like Mr. X, and hopefully I talk about Mr. X later, because Mr. X taught me the purpose of a uniform and how to go to work and be there ahead of time, despite him drinking and being at my granddad's house, honey, and my Uncle Levi's house and stuff. But he was good people. He spent a lot of time talking to me as a little girl, a lot of time. And even as I matriculate through life and become older, I'm still giving homage to him. And my good old Aunt Money, I know I didn't talk about her, but that was the goddess of love, honey. That lady lived to be over 100 years old. And me and my cousin Shirley, which is her daughter, we was talking about her because my Aunt Mother, she always had a man. And sometimes she kept two. Ah, yes, she did. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And she used to always say, honey, I'd rather be an old man dollar than a young man's food. Let me repeat that because I got to get that right for you. My Aunt Mother would, mother, Mudddah, because I'm from the South. It's Aunt Mother. She would say, I'd rather be a old man's dollar than a young man's food. And I said, what? And she would tell me that all the days of my life. She must be here new. And I know she know. She know many things. She taught me how to can vegetables from watermelon vines, and I can still do that to this every day. Still do it. But also honor your ancestors. And one of the things you can do that is by pouring a drink of water or some liquor that they love. Like for my grandfather, the liquor that I would pour, and my ancestors or excuse me, my cousins, aunts, and uncles would need to pour in order to honor him would be Budweiser and some tobacco. His favorite ones was Paul Merle in the red cigarette box, soft pack. Got to be soft pack, okay? And so, not the hard pack, and it has to be red, and it was Paul Mall, Pallmall. And so that was something that he really enjoyed, something that he really liked. And so as we continue to celebrate our freedom of this federal holiday of Juneteenth, let's not forget. Let's always remember and let us be thankful. Because had it not been for them, it would not be for us so that we can help them get through on the other side. So you have to have the past, the present, and the future all working together. And one of my mentors, she would love to say, the old need the young, and the young need the old. So until we meet again, my good friends, I Lady for you in 2023, and I will be talking to you later. Bye bye.